In this video, we're going to look at beginning to solve absolute value equations. So the thing I want you to remember is that the absolute value of a number represents its distance from zero. So if you recall, we talked about the absolute value of -6. So if we think about here's 0 on the number line, to get here to -6, we would have to move, let me make sure I have enough tick marks here. So to get to -6, we'd have to move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 places away from 0. So we're moving a distance of 6. And so we talked about this before, so that would make the absolute value of -6 equal to 6. The absolute value of +6, so if we were going in the other direction, so if we move this way, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 places, right? Then this is also a distance of 6. So the absolute value of +6 is also 6. So you'll notice that there are two different numbers whose absolute value equals 6. So if I wanted to go back the other way, and instead of asking for the absolute value, suppose I asked us to solve the absolute value of x equals 6, what we're trying to do is we're trying to figure out, well, what numbers in here would give me an absolute value of 6. So if we're talking about distance, we're asking what numbers are 6 away, right? So to go 6 away, I could go this way to that pink -6, or I could go this way to the green +6. So the answers here are x equals -6 and x equals +6. And so the way that I like to think about them are basically you end up with a negative case and a positive case. So every time you do an absolute value problem, you could have a negative number and a positive number. So here's another example. So we'll do solve the absolute value of, say, u equals 3. So again, this is just asking what numbers are 3 away from 0. So what numbers have a distance, right? So 3 away from 0 is basically saying that the distance is 3. And so those would be u equals -3, right? Think about my number line, I could go back this way to -3, or u equals +3. So again, a negative case and a positive case. So let's look at a couple more examples here. So if we think about the same idea, if I'm trying to solve the absolute value of y equals 0, so in this case, this one's a little special, right? So here I am at 0 and I want to know, well, I'm sitting here, so I'm sitting right here, and I don't want to move at all. I want the distance to be 0, so I'm not going to move at all. So the only things that would give us 0 is actually 0. So in this case, there's only one answer, y equals 0. Now, if you wanted to use the same thing I did before, so if you had the absolute value of y equals 0, and you think about, a negative case and a positive case, we would end up with y equals -0 and y equals +0. But -0, right, that's just the same as y equals 0. So in each case, you get 0. The other kind of weird case is if you have solve, say, the absolute value of w equals -4. So what this -4 here is saying is it's saying that the distance from 0 is negative. And that's kind of like a little weird, right? Like, doesn't really make sense, right? If you think about a tape measure, if you pulled out a tape measure, every tape measure you pull out, the numbers are all positive, so you can only measure positive distance. So distance is always positive. So if on the right-hand side here, if you have the absolute value all by itself on the left-hand side, and then you have a number here, what we're basically saying is this can never happen. So this problem actually gives us no solution, because there's no way that you can move a distance that's negative. So if you have the absolute value of x being equal to a positive number, right, then that's when we're going to split it into the negative and the positive case. If you have the absolute value of x being equal to 0, then your answer is just going to be x equals 0. And if you have the absolute value of x being equal to a negative number, I guess I'll use the number sign, then this is the place where you get no solution. So every absolute value problem kind of falls into one of these three categories. Either you're splitting it up like I did here to get two solutions, you just have x equals 0, or whatever your variable is equals 0, or you have no solution.